It's the end of January, and quite clearly it is still very much winter. We got a nice fluffy cold snow last night. I'd like to clear the driveway a little bit, and I realize there's an opportunity here to obtain a yield insofar as this high tunnel. In the middle of winter, we can be doing things that move our spring aspirations forward, and I'd like to share some ideas around that, so stick around. Certainly with weather like this, I am not thinking about sowing seeds or, digging into the soil and transplanting. The ground's pretty frozen, lots and lots of cold. But in our season extension spaces, we can be prepping the soil in those areas. And we don't really have any irrigation that we can work with this time of year. Even if we did, the lines would be frozen, but we're dependent on rainwater, which is definitely not online right now. But we could be hydrating the soil in here and prepping it for seeding soon. This is a 4-panel cattle panel high tunnel I made maybe 10 years ago now, something like that. Still standing, still operating down here by the road. This is where we grew our turmeric last year, which I can link to that video here. And you can see what I've been doing, slowly chipping away as time allows, putting snow that needs to be moved anyway onto the soil in here, which will allow, it's basically a free fertilizing and drip irrigation system for this soil. The soil is dark, this space is definitely warmer than outside, and so when I put snow on here, it's hydrating the soil gently and slowly, getting it ready to get things sown in the next month or so. We're going to be starting onions pretty soon and some nursery plants that like a long, slow beginning in the spring, and this space would be nice to get dialed in for that. One of the things I like about adding snow to the soil is it really does percolate in so slow, so gently, and yes, it makes the soil a little colder, but again, we're not trying to be growing stuff right now anyway. Right now the soil's a little locked up from overnight. We had about 18 Fahrenheit last night. But I can cover this with snow today, and over the course of a week or 2 weeks, each day that there's a little bit of sun warming the space, gently it'll be drip irrigating the soil and getting it ready for sowing. I want to be a little bit thoughtful about the snow I collect. So for example, right down by the road, they use a lot of salt here. I'm not taking anything from down here. I don't need to add any road gunk into this high tunnel. And I don't need to scrape right down to ground in case there's any drippings from vehicles. We have an electric car which, theoretically has less drippings, but the tires definitely have gunk on them. And we have friends that come and go. So it'll be a skimming of the snow to slowly hydrate that space, move the snow, get it fully out of the way in case we get a lot more coming up. And a nice thing to do, if I was really busy in the spring, I wouldn't be trying to do this level of minutia and detail, but in midwinter, it's a nice activity. Certainly slower than just throwing it off to the side, but I've got time to kill in the midwinter here, and it's kind of nice to keep things tidy as we go. And with 4 shovelfuls, we've got a few square feet in here that are both insulated and primed to do some slow hydration. Something to consider, maybe you've got perennial herbaceous plants that need cold, moist stratification to germinate. Maybe you want to start poppies and then sow them outside. This might be a really neat way to both mimic the outdoors in a covered space like this. You sow your seeds on the surface, maybe work them in just a little bit, and then bury them deeply in snow and let that slowly work the hydration in while keeping the soil very cold. We're mimicking full-on solid winter here, but with just a little bit of buffering from extreme cold and from desiccating winds by being in this space. I'm going to load this whole space up with snow, including the walkway, which has a deep deposition of shredded leaves from the fall. Soon enough we'll revisit this, but this is our compost heating bin on the west end of this, and once the soil is hydrated and we're sowing seeds in, we'll load that back up and get it piping hot again to get the space ready to start seeds in about a month or so. We're at the end of January now, that'll be the end of February. Something else I like to do when there's fresh snow is knock the snow selectively from just one side. So these high tunnels run east to west. In particular, they do that so that they get a really good amount of southern solar gain. This is the north side. I leave all the snow on the north side, but I bop the stuff off the southern side, although that's fallen too. try to knock more off the south so the sun can come in but leave stuff on the north in order to stay insulated. Something to note is that I could certainly be leveraging a sled or a wheelbarrow for this and be a little bit more organized and optimized. You know, load that up, drag it over, dump it in. My back's feeling a little bit tender from an injury recently, so I'm kind of moving slow and steady. Sometimes I think there's value, especially when I'm not in a rush, to do something that's repetitive and gentle and meditative instead of optimizing fully for production. So both ways I think are valid. I think this time of year, being in the sun and just slowly, gently chipping away at it is actually kind of therapeutic and relaxing. When we're under a little bit more time crunch, I'll try to optimize each step to make things better, but just acknowledging different ways you can approach things depending on the time of year and your mindset. You'd think we were outside now, but we're still in this space. Season extension provided with both insulation, a little bit of fertility in the form of nitrogen from bound up in the snow, and certainly hydration in a very, very slow, gentle, meandering way to get that water down into the earth. And all of that snow barely took up any of the driveway, so I've got probably 2/3 more of the driveway, actually quite a bit more, if we want to shovel it out. It's supposed to thaw out in the next few days, so I'm not too worried, but I thought it was an opportunity to clear out the end of the driveway, which we tend to want to do anyway, so it's safer to people pulling in and pulling out. Get that cleared out and get this area insulated and hydrated. Probably in about a month we'll return to this to get the compost heating system set up on the far end and get it sown out. But a nice gentle activity for, 20 minutes or so in the middle of winter to get the gardening season a little bit more underway. Happy gardening to you, however the weather looks for you. I like a little bit of winter gardening myself. Maybe some other folks out there do too. Take care.